What trades can you do right now in crypto for the super moon today, December 4th at 6:15 Eastern? Is it time to shake the tree before it goes higher? Or is it time for it to just go? We will look at the bullish argument, the bearish argument, and ideas if you want to get long right now. Now, just in case you're wondering about my new fancy shirt, that is t-shirt that defeats facial recognition. I'll tell you more about that later. But first, we're going to go to the argument between the bulls and the bears. I'm your host, Bill Noble. This is the Market Update. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, smash the like button, and leave a comment down below to let me know what you think about the show. Now, the bullish argument and the bearish argument. The bullish argument is on a full moon, the market bottoms. And this moon, thanks to the mathematics of some Gann researcher, they call this the super moon for whatever reason. Now, when you have these kind of full moons, you can have volatility, you can have crazy spikes, you can have the spikes to the downside. And I think we kind of know that, right? Like in Bitcoin, if you wanted to do a trade, not investment advice, but maybe 88K is where they would take it if there was some kind of stupid spike lower. This is one thing I'm going to be working out for the Patreon group over the next couple days. Now, the bullish argument is the trend has begun. The downside is over, and if there's a spike, there's going to be a spike to the upside, right? Solana and ETH have built like mini bases. ETH is breaking out above support. You may be able to get long ETH right now. Again, not investment advice, because you know what? ETH should probably be at between 3,400 or 3,800. Like, are you really going to see sub 3K ETH again? Honestly, I don't think so. Why would you? And if you look at the LuxAlgo chart, you're not looking at it, I'm looking at it. But there's a huge amount of support at 3,100 and 3,000. So what trade do you want to do today? You know, can you actually get long after it's gone up? Because obviously that has not worked in some time. Frankly, I think the answer is yes. Now, of course, bears are going to note that there's a lot of resistance in Bitcoin, probably between 95 and 100, right? They're going to say, okay, well, you know what? This is just another bear market uptick, and you guys are going to run face first into the resistance, and everybody's going to come in and sell, particularly since there seems to be some negative news from the stonks front, like, you know, Morgan Stanley wants out of their AI exposure kind of a thing. You can't argue about the resistance in Bitcoin at 95. So what can we learn from this? Ready? Maybe it's time for altcoins. Maybe it's time for Ethereum, Solana, you know, and possibly even Zcash, right? Bitcoin Cash and Dash, right? You remember these plays like when Bitcoin would sit still? It used to be meme coins that would go. Well, it feels like privacy is, in a way, the new meme coin. In other words, the fast-moving thing that people just love to chase. Everyone thinks it's over in those currencies, and Zcash has that like creeping bid. And remember, like Zcash did really well while Bitcoin was like slumping or doing nothing. So the idea of Zcash moving probably, I don't know, that may not be a surprise. But I mean, could Zcash move to 580? Could Dash go to 100? You know, like, where is the next crazy move? It could be in Dash, and you can't discount the idea that Zcash could make a new 100. I'm sorry, Zcash could make a new high. Why not? I mean, you know, I just got sent a picture of the head of BlackRock with Brian Armstrong talking about tokenization of assets, right? They're going to do this. They're going to do perps for stocks, and there's a lot of crying about it in the legacy community. Too bad. Now, back to Bitcoin. Remember, Vanguard and its whole client base and all of its mutual funds are underneath Bitcoin. So resistance at 95K, wah, 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 wah. Schwab is bringing everybody online in January. So you have sponsorship, more sponsorship, and you've got Larry Fink out there on the tape taking pictures with Brian Armstrong. So if you have a super moon or a full moon break, meaning things just sort of slow down and maybe slump a little, and if that's all that happens, I think the uptrend has a lot of room to move. Because this idea about, one, Bitcoin is hard money, and if you don't believe that, some of these altcoins have been totally left hanging out to dry. Like, XRP has not been able to make any kind of move. And you're going to start seeing arguments for head and shoulders bottoms. In other words, you go down, and you come all the way back, and you go back down again, right? They've tried to press XRP 3 different times, and they've done the same thing with Zcash and Ethereum, right? Some of these formations are small. Some of them are larger. And actually, I think in Zcash, on like a 4-hour chart, you're seeing a diamond bottom form, meaning it's just this little diagonal at the bottom of this huge avalanche. Really, there's nobody home in Zcash until 600, 606, right? Wrong again said Zcash ready to move. Dude, I think I'm with you, okay? Routine Cheese says, Bill, you pounded the table on Solana when it was under $10. That was Toby, right? I had a little help on that one. Okay, you pounded the Zcash when it was at 25. That was 3 years ago. Now, what's the new Solana? What's the new Zcash? You got to ask these questions, right? Because, what we learned from Zcash is the thing that everyone's long doesn't move. Now, I don't know if everybody's already long Zcash. Maybe. But I would open your eyes to the idea of a surprise rally in ETH. Remember, ETH was at 3,200 when FTX started, and currently ETH is below 3,100. Now, I know you're going to think it's crazy, but there's so much support in ETH. How are they going to take altcoins down? How are they going to take altcoins down? Right? So some people say that, Zcash did a 22x and it's had its time in the sun. Okay, that's possible, but are you telling me that the privacy theme is not going to carry over into 2026? You can beat facial recognition with this shirt. Supposedly in France, they're talking about the Ministry of Truth. And everywhere you go, there's an invitation to say the wrong things and have a meeting with the authorities as a result. Privacy will be essential. And there is another idea. It's not a bull market until you can buy a dip and make money. So if you have this huge dip, this huge drop in, say, Solana, Solana went from 250 in the middle of September to 120. So you had a $100 drop in Solana during the fall. From the fall equinox to the supermoon in December, $100 down in Solana. And everyone is acting like that can't be unwound. In other words, what happens if we're literally in this environment where, everyone gets bullish and they drop it hard for a month or two, and then everybody gets bearish or gets out, and then they ramp it back in the other direction? Why can't that happen? Especially after what gold has done, and especially since, Vanguard is underneath Bitcoin. Now, a lot of bears will say, because, I have a little debate here between the bulls and the bears. You're right. The bears will say it's a bull trap. Everything has been, making lower highs on the way down, right? And the Fed last week really didn't start QE. It just did this little tweak in the money markets. And there are 2 meetings coming up, one on the 10th and one on the 18th. And you know what? The 10th is the Fed and the 18th is the Bank of Japan. So the legacy guys, I think they're going to stick with the bearish sentiment. I think they're all still after Michael Saylor. I think they're addicted to it. I think they are literally addicted to the big short. And I don't know if they're going to get it. Like, for example, the ETH ETF has seen its first inflow in December. In other words, the stock market people are going, wait a minute, let's rotate out and let's rotate into crypto. I mean, this happened when ETH was at 1,300. I mean, ETH went from 1,300 to 4,800. And I know this is crazy, but I don't know why ETH can't go from 3,000 to 5,000. Why can't that happen? I mean, the market caps of these cryptos, the market caps of all crypto is just hovering around 3 trillion. That isn't a lot of money if you compare it to stonks. So again, back to kind of our tactical conversation. Bulls and bears arguing with each other, but the simple fact of the matter is you have altcoins in an area where you could buy them right now, or you could buy a mini flash dip on the full moon if they decide to hit it like on the close. Like, the Australian morning will see the full moon. So a lot of times full moons can be bottoms. It's almost like you want them to try to hit it today. So you can just go down there and scoop it up. Like, for example, if you ever saw a Zcash go back to like 330, I don't know if they're in the mood for that because it's at 363. That would be like the add aggressively zone, not investment advice, right? Because your upside targets are 395 and 450, right? The super optimistic, just plain Jane target is 587. So, everyone wants to add Zcash at 320. You may not get it. I think everybody wants to add Bitcoin below 90 again. And my question is very simple. What happens if you don't get it? Laggy Boy says, I'm new here. What's this all about? Sir, this is the market update where we try to give you tomorrow's news, tomorrow's trades, tomorrow's targets today. Sometimes we focus on trading like today. Sometimes we focus on macro and news analysis, and we're absolutely welcoming anybody new who's here. Okay, so Wrong Again says monthly MACD is bearish on Bitcoin. Yes, absolutely. There is negative technicals out there everywhere. You have the 50-day crossing below the 200-day moving average in Bitcoin called the death cross. Normally when you get it, you get a rally. It's what I think is in progress. Even if Bitcoin is done, I think the rally could be much bigger than anyone thinks. Everyone is upset because Bitcoin is below the 55-week moving average. That's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 105. I submit to you this. What happens if Bitcoin gets to 105 and takes it out? Then what happens? Right? In other words, the idea of stopping in. Notice that Bitcoin, as of now, goes up and then just kind of sits. Now, sometimes, Bitcoin sitting still is negative. But again, once this full moon is over, if that acts as a bottom, people may be waiting for a dip and they may not get one. And something tells me that if you did get a dip, you wouldn't want to buy it. That's what it feels like. It feels like, oh, well, you can buy dips or you can try to buy dips, but perhaps it maybe already has done its dip. And the sideways trade is the way to go just because, are we really going to wait for Solana to go back to 120? Do we think that that's where Solana should be trading? When LuxAlgo is putting a whole bunch of support, like right at 136, 138? It's at 142. I mean, how big of a decline do you think you're going to get? And I don't think you're going to get any decline in Monero, because Monero is probably one of the best performing cryptos of the year on the privacy front. Okay. And it hasn't moved. Now, somebody's saying we're going to dump. We're going to go to the low 60s before it's over. Wrong Again says I'm buying 77K. Okay. And, I think if Bitcoin goes to 60, you won't want it anymore. You won't want it at 60, because it'll probably be because of some sort of major problem in the banking system. Some of the gold guys are saying that, somebody just bought a huge amount of gold and they're never going to be able to deliver. And if they can't deliver a giant order of physical gold, then all these paper contracts and all these futures contracts could literally fail. How grim is that? Okay. Now, it is intriguing because, this has been a story in gold for years, that there just isn't enough physical gold to go around for everybody who has a paper ticket that says they own gold. But I mean, Bitcoin, particularly if you got self-custody, and Vanguard is beneath it, and so is the Fed. They do not want risk assets going down at the holidays. And if Vanguard and Schwab are underneath Bitcoin or underneath some big altcoins with the ETFs, with Bitcoin 20, 30% off of its high, I actually think the risk reward for trading is not buying the mini dip for it to actually turn around and go up after 7 p.m. Eastern. Okay. GF says, do you think they should nationalize MicroStrategy to save it from the short selling sharks? Okay. Well, one day MicroStrategy is definitely going to get nationalized. There's no question about that. Or the government will just simply buy the company. Instead of having to go in the open market to buy all that Bitcoin, somebody will just come in and buy the company. It's easy as pie. In other words, if the hedge funds pound MicroStrategy stock down low enough, somebody would come in and just buy the company. You're not going to buy 600,000 Bitcoin. Not now, not ever. Right? I mean, the only way you're going to get 600,000 Bitcoin is if it goes to 20K. Then I'm sure you can get all the Bitcoin you want. So what would be great is if MicroStrategy would stop buying Bitcoin because they short the stock relative to the value of the Bitcoin that they hold. So you actually want Bitcoin to go up and MicroStrategy stock to actually do nothing or go down. That way, hedge funds will stop doing this trade where they buy Bitcoin and short MicroStrategy. And of course, Jim Cramer, paid by the hedge funds to go out there and be a reverse indicator and say, Michael Saylor will beat the shorts. What is Jim Cramer talking about Michael Saylor for? He doesn't know anything about what MicroStrategy is doing at all. MicroStrategy has a moat around that company to where, again, nobody could replicate what he does. BlackRock had to issue an ETF to get the similar amount of Bitcoin. And again, they own that on behalf of customers. BlackRock doesn't own it. BlackRock has it on their balance sheet because they have the ETF, but nobody's got what he has. And everyone's like, yeah, just buy the ETF. I'm like, sure, absolutely. Just buy the ETF. But one day someone's going to want the entire company. And I've been saying this on my short videos that you're going to regret the day that you looked at Bitcoin at 80 or 90 or sub 100, and your idea was to short it at 95 and make fun of Michael Saylor. To me, that makes absolutely no sense. I mean, what is your vision for digital assets? That Larry Fink is an idiot, that they're not going to tokenize like a lot of what goes on in legacy? There's a huge opportunity for somebody to dominate. Like Larry dominates the Bitcoin ETF. They're going to want to dominate who trades the S&P 500 on chain, right? BlackRock is in, and then Vanguard comes in, and then Schwab comes in, and it's amazing. They were all screaming for it at 120 Bitcoin. And then the investment banks, caved and said, okay, we'll let you do it. And now it's materially lower. It's actually working out great for the retail stock base. They're like, oh my God, we can buy this when it's down. They bought every dip in Nvidia. Nvidia has had multiple 20% declines over, say, the last 15 years. Everyone forgets about that. If you bought every 20% dip in Magnificent Seven stocks, you did well. And once it dipped, you didn't wait for it to dip again. So like entry prices, if you stuck around, 355, 360 in Zcash, 3180 in ETH. Okay, anywhere between 93K in Bitcoin, hey, that could be an entry. Right now, you got 92.7, 140 in Solana, and 49 to 50 in Dash. So the crazy targets, right? If you this the theme of this is, if I had to do a trade today, I think if you didn't have to do a trade today, you'd wait to see if there was a wick down off that whole supermoon thing. But what's the crazy target for ETH? It's 4,200. That seems very lofty. It seems like, the charts are favoring ETH. Solana at 200, that's pretty lofty. 4,200 and 110K in Bitcoin. So according to our Gann model, it may not be about Bitcoin. Bitcoin may be able to get itself back above the 55-week moving average. But it would be pretty funny if the trade was in, say, ETH and Dash, or Zcash went to 587, or Zcash made a new high at like 800. There is an Elliott wave scenario for a new high in Zcash, right? Mainly because Monero is so strong and there's not that many privacy coins in the marketplace, right? Not like my friends from Antivirus and their new chain Matrix, right? Where they outfit your friendly neighborhood YouTuber with some nice t-shirts that if you walk through an airport, Palantir can't see you. They can't see you. If you wear these shirts, it actually defeats facial recognition. It's actually unbelievable, right? It's like, Buck 52,000 says you saw Larry Fink and Brian Armstrong were hanging out together. It's a very nice picture. It's a very nice picture. And I'm going to tell you what I think it means. It means that these guys are not going to let Bitcoin make a new low, that they're going to be in there underneath it. There is no crypto Fed, but they can all call each other, like Coinbase, Galaxy, BlackRock. They can call each other and go, you know what? We may need to stand down here and take some of this Bitcoin to keep this thing from vaporizing. I actually think they're set and ready to defend 80, because I don't know if it goes below 80, if like anything in the 70s is going to hold. Because you got to remember, that would be pretty distressing. People were pretty distressed the first time down to 80. I think the risk is to the upside. The risk is that people are looking for a dip or are afraid to buy it. And the idea to catch the bears off guard is for it to jump in Asia time tonight or in the New York morning. In other words, now that I talk it out, crypto has been dumping during Asia time because of the whole thing with Japan. But if crypto doesn't dump, it shouldn't, because I don't know why anybody thinks the Fed and the Bank of Japan is going to ruin Christmas. I don't know why anyone thinks that. So what you're really looking for in this market, if you're looking for specific guidance, does crypto dump in Asia time? If it doesn't, in my mind, the market's telling you it actually wants to go higher, right? Someone's asking about Fartcoin. Well, Fartcoin and large altcoins, large meme coins, in my opinion, okay, they get moved by algos and trading desks. So if an algo or a hedge fund wants Fartcoin to move higher, they turn on the algorithm and off it goes. Now, what you've got right now is, and you can see this probably in a lot of other places, is you have bag holders selling the first rally. In other words, you get a rally, everyone's been upset, and everyone decides to get out. So, here's just something funny. Like, let me see if I can actually share the chart of Fartcoin. Okay. So here's Fartcoin. And this is actually pretty good because I think this is very representative of what you see in the rest of the market. You see this like what I would call a stealth breakout. So, it's been traveling in this brutal downward sloping wedge. And as soon as you take the pressure off, you break out. LuxAlgo puts support underneath it. And then this becomes a tug of war. I don't think they can hit it back down below this yellow line. And of course, we're talking about, again, we're talking about Fartcoin. Meme coins are not the place to be. Toby has been saying that for 3 years, and now I think it's become obvious. You got to be long technology and money. What's technology and money? Eat Solana, XRP, Bitcoin Cash, Dash, Zcash, and Monero. Right? And then if you want to get fancy, you maybe can try the other privacy coins like Decred. I mean, why would you not try privacy at the end of the year? Especially if Bitcoin, just kind of drifts towards 100 or sits in the range that we discussed in the YouTube member area between, 88 and 98. Now, of course, that range is a part of a larger scenario. So whether that range is good or bad, you'll have to tune in to find out. And of course, there's what my cohort thinks, Toby, which, speaks to the idea of, what? Sideways could be the new dip, particularly after this full moon. If nothing really happens on the downside, if they can't get it going on the downside, shorts are going to get blown out. I think it's very easy to make the bear case that every rally gets sold. Bitcoin is headed for resistance at 95. Okay. Are they going to get short? Are they going to hedge? Yeah, probably. Is it going to work? I don't think so. Not with Vanguard underneath. Like, this is the thing that people are not following, right? People are not following how big Vanguard is. And with BlackRock posing for pictures, guys, these guys can hold up a teeny weeny market like crypto. They can move Magnificent Seven stocks. If those mutual funds, if they put Magnificent Seven stocks in every mutual fund they have, no matter what it is, which they do, like, when I worked at Schwab, Apple was in every single mutual fund. It was, no matter what it was. Emerging market stocks in North Africa. Top 3 holding, Apple. Okay. So news in legacy is filled with negativity, like the Widowmaker awakens, Japanese government bond market panic and the deleveraging trap. Goldman warns copper's parabolic breakout lacks stability. Morgan Stanley quietly gets rid of its AI data center exposure. Are you seeing a pattern here? I am. Okay. Negativity sells. Negativity reinforces people's view that the market is done, that crypto is done, and it's a bear market. It's not a bear market because so far, like in Zcash, you were able to buy dips to major levels. And it's the same thing in Bitcoin. And I'm wondering, with all this talk in gold and Bitcoin slowing down, whether or not, again, it's time to get after ETH or altcoins in general. Notice Arrow perky this morning up 3%. Right? In other words, you got to start looking at what's moving, right? Like Propy, real estate, and ask yourself, wait a minute, what is this telling me about the market? I think it's telling you that the finance and the privacy arena, finance is in like the future of money, wants to go up. Render and Arweave, two of our favorite AI trades, are green this morning with everything else down. So is Tau and Grass. That's DPIN for normies. Near is an AI coin that we like. It's essentially the AI layer one, in my opinion. That's up today with everything else down. You have to keep an open mind, right? The fear that drove this thing down, I think, is still there. I mean, I know we can all make bullish thumbnails on YouTube and we can all say, hey, everything's great. I don't think anyone believes that. I think people are so wounded and just kind of just messed up that if you told them to just jump in and get after it, they don't want to do it. Radium's up 5% today for all you Solana fans. I mean, I can't believe with Larry Fink and Brian Armstrong posing for a picture together that we're not thinking about stablecoins. Caspa, a layer one that's been outperforming, is also up today. So let's take a moment to think about what's next, because no one wants to talk about altcoins. Like no one. Like I've heard talk on Bitcoin. I hear the Maxis are all doing their podcasts. I don't hear anyone talking about ETH at all. At all. Like, you know, I've seen Tom Lee on the tape talking about the stock market. You know, where is the ETH stablecoin conversation, and where is the conversation about ETH following altcoins? Warmon picked up Zcash at 309, looking good. Yeah, I mean, if you bought the despair in this market, okay, you know, Rock Lobster says he likes Monero better, and I'm okay with that, right? Because again, I'm outfitted here to defeat Palantir. You know, my friends, there's zero promotion. It's antivirus.ai. I'm just helping these guys out because they actually believe they're making their own privacy coin called Matrix. You know, you can actually get in on that via a Solana token. And in any case, privacy is an underrated theme because everyone just focused on the Zcash moonshot. The rest of privacy went with Zcash. And I don't hear anyone talking about it. I mean, you hear about privacy when, you know, when Zcash is mooning, but you're not hearing much about it now. Like Dusk, you know, that's the RWA, the private trading layer one, is up today. You know, what happens if like the ETH base and privacy universe start rallying? That's a good leadership group for altcoins. And no one thinks altcoins can have leadership. Yeah, actually they can. They can. And everybody thinks if Bitcoin stalls at 95 or trades at 90, that somehow that's bad. It actually isn't. It isn't, because it leaves the rest of the market room to move. I mean, what are you going to buy between now and the end of the year if you're going to fade this whole doom and gloom thing about the Fed and the Bank of Japan? Like, what is really going to move? It's got to be crypto, because I think these legacy guys that are looking for all of this end of the world stuff from these central banks, they're going to be disappointed. They're going to be disappointed. And the down move that they're looking for may not unfold until later. Meanwhile, crypto has huge, huge upside, right? Burger King Cook thinks, you know, what's going on in the base chain will actually, you know, go crazy. And yes, we do like Avalanche. We do. Everyone's talking about security tokens. No one's talking about Avalanche. It's amazing. I mean, every layer one is not going to win, right? I mean, I think ETH, you know, our group, Toby is a big ETH person. And I think in the AI world, you have to look at Near, because Near, I don't know, it was billed as the thing that fixed everything that was wrong with ETH and then some. right? So, again, can you buy the market right now? I think there's a case for the answer to be yes, particularly if you have, ETH stable above 3,000, you have Zcash stable above 350, and frankly, if you don't get any type of material downtick in Bitcoin, because, we've watched Bitcoin just completely fall out of bed, every week since it topped in October. If you can't get anything more than a 1% down move in Bitcoin, this thing can result in much higher prices. Wormon says base is underwhelming, and it may be, unless you have ignition in ETH. Coinbase has to get the base network moving by listing anything that comes up on base. When they get done taking pictures with Larry, hopefully they get that. Okay, so those are the trades of the day and the ideas of the day. We'll see who the winners and losers are. We will see you in 2 days.